Good evening and welcome to another edition of State of the Union. I'm your host, Kevin Kimble, CEO and founder of the Financial Services Innovation Coalition and the executive director of the Southern Christian Leadership Global Policy Initiative. Tonight, I have two great guests. Joining us again is Brad Anderson, the CEO and president of Global Risk Managers, and he's also the co-chair of the Financial Services Innovation Coalition's Infrastructure and Inclusion Task Force. And our special guest tonight is Mr. Ernest Ellis, president of the Atlanta chapter of the National Association of Minority Contractors. He is also
Tracy. Kevin, can you hear me?
Yeah, can hear you fine.
I can't hear you guys.
Oh, well, we have technical difficulties. Okay. That happens. You always have that problem, but you have that a lot. Well, Mr. Ernest, we'll get started with you since Brad is technically incapacitated. We had your lovely, very capable co-worker on last week or 2 weeks ago. So you got big shoes to fill, but have every confidence that you can. So we were talking before we got started. I'm trying to Brad dropped off, so he's going to call Tracy. Let's talk to me about what you said before. I thought that was the most important thing you said, that the federal government or the government is the largest procurer. And that's why it's so important for people who are in contracting to try to get government contracts, whether it be construction or others. So talk a little bit about that. Let's just break the ice for people.
Well, NAMAC, the National Association of Minority Contractors' mission is to advocate and.
Brad, are you there? Can you hear us?
Yep.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Ellis.
So again, our trade association, NAMAC, the National Association of Minority Contractors' primary mission is to put our members in position and relationships and opportunities where they have the access to deal flow, contracts, and work that will put them in a position to not only grow their businesses, but to build wealth. And when you look at a marketplace, whether you're in landscaping or construction or software development, you look at the marketplace and identify where the deal flow is.
Right.
So it is very, very simple that the federal government is the largest procurer of goods and services, to include construction services, in the world.
Right.
So as an association and as individual business owners, we have to pay attention to what the federal government is doing, what the federal government opportunities are, what the requirements are to work with and do business with the various agencies, and do everything we can to put our members in a position where they can be successful.
So, Brad, I know you have a couple of questions. You want to start yours and I can ask mine later? You want me to go first?
I'll go.
Go ahead.
So first, I want to congratulate President Ellis on becoming the executive vice president of NAMAC National. And I know you just spoke about NAMAC nationally. Can you tell us a little bit about your new position as the executive vice president?
Well, it was an honor to be elected as the executive vice president of the organization, working in concert with Wendell Stimley, our national president, and the rest of the executive committee and the board of directors. It has been a mission of mine to give back and to do whatever I could to make sure that people like me who are non-traditional, minority, disadvantaged, have an opportunity to have access to deal flow and work and the ability to build capacity and establish wealth, generational wealth. And in my role as executive vice president, I'm able to help the organization, our trade association, think about what the future looks like. Think about what the next generation of contractors look like, because we are going through a sea change in this country and in our industry. We have a number of technology-related initiatives that are going to change how we do business. It's going to change how we build. AI is changing how we need to look at our businesses and invest for the future. The fact that we don't have enough people to do the work, and the industry is probably 500,000 people short just to be able to do all the work that we need to be done now. These are all the things that I'm trying to work with President Stimley and the rest of NAMAC's board and nationally to put ourselves in a position where we are the solution. We feel very strongly that we are the solution to help build a stronger build community, to build a ecosystem that will allow our communities access to wealth and growth, and to put more of our people in a position where they can make their way into the middle class faster without some of the hurdles that they've had to go through previously. So I'm humbled to have been elected last year as executive vice president and doing my best to serve.
So can you kind of give us an update on what NAMAC nationally is doing to address some of President Trump's executive orders against DE&I and DBE programs?
We have been very intentional in our approach, and I'll try to be succinct but thorough in my answer at the same time. Number one, we absolutely will not and do not agree to retreat 1 inch from the gains that we've made, from the advances that we have been able to establish. We do not apologize for the policies that have put our members and our communities in a position to have access to opportunity and deal flow. We will continue to advocate on behalf of those programs, those certifications, those initiatives that give us access to opportunity. At the same time, we continue to work hard as a trade association to put our membership, put our association in the room with owners, developers, prime contractors, communities, governments, to tell the story that, hey guys, we have tens of thousands of contractors across this country that traditionally have not gotten access to your projects, that traditionally haven't had opportunities to scale, access to capital. And when we get those kinds of things, we bring capable workers, we bring capable bonding capacity, we bring cash, we bring the desire to scale and grow. So we continue to work with, again, all those stakeholders that I mentioned earlier, but at the same time, there's a fight to be fought. And I know you've had Rodney Strong Esquire on to talk about some of the things that he believes are existential threats. And he has been working with us, with NAMAC, with our president, Wendell Stimley, to number one, help us with strategy to fight some of the legal fights that we've needed to fight, to give us direction and insight as to people and firms that we should partner with, like in BELDEF and Democracy Forward. And through those efforts, we have been very intentional about, number one, fighting on the MAMCO case in Northern Kentucky. We intervened on that case when the federal government essentially threw up their hands and say, we agree the DBE program should go away. We agree, and we'll pay your legal fees. Well, the fact that we intervened along with AMAC and some others with MBELDEF and Democracy Forward's legal support, we were able to get that case dismissed. When that effort began, quite frankly, some noise outside felt like we were wasting our time. That the deck was stacked against us.
Kevin, can you hear him?
Yes.
The inertia against our community, against DEI, against access to opportunities were so strong that we were just going to get rolled over, and that case was going to be a lost cause. Well, lo and behold, it was not a lost cause. We won that case. That case was dismissed. The case was made. The case was heard. The judge agreed with us, and that case is off the table.
What was the ruling? What was the ruling? What did the judge rule?
So the MAMCO case basically was a contractor that was bringing a case against the DBE program, a majority contractor bringing a case against the DBE program, alleging discrimination, and citing the Civil Rights Act, the 1800s that several others are citing, and so prior to the judge making a ruling, we intervened on behalf because our side of the case needed to be heard.
Right.
So at the same time, and during that same period of time, the interim final ruling came out. And so all of those working in concert led the judge to basically agree with NAMAC that, this case should not move forward. It should be dismissed. He found the case moot. And, and the important takeaway from that is that case will no longer make its way to the Supreme Court. Right. We definitely did not want to happen, because had it made its way to the Supreme Court, we all know what that fight would have been. Yeah. So NAMAC took the lead in intervening in that case. NAMAC led the lead with financing that effort. NAMAC was in the room with Democracy Forward and in BelDef to make sure that, we're going to fight, where the law is on our side. And, thankfully that the judge saw it our way.
So are they going to appeal the ruling, or are they going to appeal the ruling, or are they going to let it go?
We're not certain at this point.
So I'm going to ask you, in the same vein, one of the things that strikes us is that Black contractors at the federal government level getting less than 2% of contracts across the board. Some places zero, like in highway, federal highway, and DOD, very few, if any, Blacks get into those contracts. What are these white guys? What are they complaining about? What are these laws? I mean, what discrimination are they facing?
I wish I knew, to be quite honest. I mean, the reality is, I think the disaggregated data that President Biden finally made public when he was president showed that we were like 1.7%. Yeah. And the numbers haven't risen. The numbers haven't changed. The reality is that from a purely objective numbers perspective, I don't know what the argument is with regards to them being discriminated against. Have
they proven? Have they proven any discrimination in any of these cases where they've alleged it?
Their whole strategy has been to lean on the Civil Rights Act that actually freed the slaves. Right. That actually, called for no discrimination against a person because of their color. They're leaning on that specific law as their basis for having a colorblind procurement society. I mean, I have not seen any recent case or any recent data that certifies or justifies what we would consider discrimination. Now, as it relates to the information, if we are representing 13% of the population and getting 1.7% of the federal work, then we are completely underrepresented. Yeah. And that's a numerical fact. Right. So they can't make that same assertion. The numbers don't support that discussion.
So let me ask you this as a follow-up to that question. Have you sued or thought about suing all these contractors, suing the government for active discrimination against Black contractors, since we know the numbers are so bad, and making them prove that they haven't been discriminatory, making them defend their contract and our procurement processes?
That has not been on our agenda. We have been more proactive with regards to ensuring that the DBE program, that is the law, the DBE program, the Disadvantaged Business Program, which has been on the books for many, many, many years, that has a mandate in every state to spend 10 to 20%, especially in transportation dollars, that work actually does get released, that it actually does get procured, and that Black and brown contractors do have opportunities for it. That's been our strategy. Let's lean into the law that is on the books and hold them accountable for what actually is in place. The reality is that the many states that that have received federal dollars, that have mandates, haven't met what's on the books.
Right. And has anyone sued them? Has anyone sued them for that? Have they been? Have you guys sued any of the states for not making the DBE requirements?
I know that NAMAC, to my knowledge, has not sued. That's not been part of our strategy. Now this is me speaking personally. That's a heavy lift. With regards to the capital that'd be required to get that down the road. But NAMAC again has not. So since I've been involved since 2020, sorry, we've not gone down that road.
Have you guys talked to the Department of Justice? This Department of Justice, not so much, but even this Department of Justice filed complaints for anti-competitive behavior in the marketplace, like these guys suing the suit you just talked about, where clearly there's collusion among these plaintiffs in the process, and there has to be some sort of but presumably there's some sort of collusive activity by the guys who are making these lawsuits who are also getting all the contracts. Has that come up in any of your conversations?
So we have submitted any number of complaints, letters, official notices, through the National Association. President Stimley has written a number of correspondences and actually has, had discussions and meetings over the years with various secretaries of transportation with regards to the reality on the street, the reality on the road, so to speak. I mean, we have documented at the state level and at the federal level when states have not complied, and the impact that it does have not just on our community but the community at large, because we add value. I mean, when you compare our companies to majority companies that provide our services, the same services that we provide, 9 times out of 10 they're going to be more expensive than we are.
Right.
So we add value, we provide value. So it does a disservice to the state. It does a disservice to the taxpayers when we don't have a seat at the table. So yes, we have been consistent, since I've been on the board, again, since 2020, in communicating, what we see, what we hear, and what we think the solution is. Again, access to opportunity is good for everyone, citizens, state, and federal.
Yeah, no, I mean the assault on Black businesses is incredibly aggressive. I mean, I'm sure it's aggressive from all minority, but we've been focusing on African Americans particularly. And 3 weeks ago we had Black mental health professionals out of Richmond who've been discriminated against. Their contracting ability was removed or changed so that all the mental health contracts went mostly to one organization, and then a few others were allowed to subcontract. Or Black doctors or Black medical professionals are struggling with anti-competitive behavior and racism. So we're just, it seems like there's a real growing network of people who should be coming together to file more suits, because we're the ones that should be taking advantage of the Civil Rights Act of 1898, not the white guys first. So I'm just curious about that. Talk to us a little bit about what you see as the future. So we've been working on legislative solutions, right? To this, we've been talking. Congressman Jonathan Jackson and some other members of the Congress have a task force called the DE Caucus, and so we've been working with them on strategies and ideas about legislation. Working with a couple other members of Congress who on the Oversight Committee. If you could structure 5 asks that could make a big difference in improving the situation, what would they be?
So number one, it's all about access. I'm speaking from personal experience,
right,
and as well as my own business, as well as being involved with the trade association. For our community, for our members, it's access to opportunity. One of the things that the city of Atlanta has done very, very well through their equal business opportunity certification is that it creates access to subcontracting opportunities. It creates access to opportunities at the prime level, because any contract over $5 million in the city of Atlanta requires a joint venture. Okay. And because they did the disparity study right, because Rodney Strong did it, they seek 35% participation, on nearly every project. And so that creates access to deal flow, access to opportunity. So that'd be number one. The second thing I would ask for is, access to capital, and not just capital for capital's sake. It's access to capital fluency first. And so, one of the things I was sharing with Brad earlier, we as Black contractors, we have to look out the window and see what the federal government's doing, what the state government's doing, what the municipal governments are doing, what the developers are allowing us to do, and what the financial markets do. But we also have to look in the mirror. We have to look in the mirror and ask ourselves, why aren't we scaling? What do we have to do to compete? Because one of the realities that we're going to have to face is that regardless of where we are now, even with presidential change and administration shifts, there is an eroding of the environment where these certifications are going to continue. We have to figure out the financial component, because cash and finance are the oxygen for growing businesses. So it's capital. We have to have access to capital. Third is,
can I actually ask you a question about that before we go to the third one?
Sure.
One of the things we've been pushing is opportunity zones. So we've been dead set opposed to opportunity zones. We testified against them when they first came out, but they keep getting passed, so they're a reality. And I don't know if you know this or not, but every governor has to redraw their opportunity zones based on a new law. I assume somewhere in Atlanta will get one. But one of the things that we're encouraging our business owners to do, especially in contract, is to make sure that the cities don't approve contract or projects with opportunity funds unless they include more minorities. Now, I don't know if Atlanta's done that for their opportunity zones, the $5 million limit applies to that. But that is another place where we think making sure that all that tax-free money that comes in has to have some minority participation.
Again, I have to salute what the city of Atlanta and the associated organization, community development groups like Invest Atlanta have done. I mean, again, it doesn't matter if it's $5 million worth of accounting services, $5 million of paper goods, $5 million of contracting services. I mean, at that level, it requires a joint venture with a minority or female firm. And even if the subcontracting dollars are over $5 million, if it's an electrical package over $5 million, that electrical subcontractor at the prime has to partner with somebody that does not look like them. Again, it creates access to deal flow, access to opportunity, and quite frankly, it gives small contractors the opportunity to succeed or fail. Right? It gives them the opportunity to step up and pull wire, or step up and do drywall, and step up or do concrete work. Along with a larger partner. And firms like mine, I've had the ability to work on $2.3 billion worth of projects as joint venture partners over the years because of some of the things that the city of Atlanta and other markets allow. So, whether it's an opportunity zone or a municipality or a private company that is intentional about, opportunity and developing a deeper bench, a deeper bench that provides more value, those move the needle. And you just have to look at firms across the country that are taking advantage of those and see that those programs work, whether it's in Chicago or Seattle or Houston or Atlanta. Those programs work and they add value for everybody. Everybody wins in those.
right, number 3.
So number 3, I would say there's a training component
Mm-hmm.
that comes with capacity, and I know a lot of folks, kind of roll their eyes when training gets thrown at them. I was on the board of directors of the National Minority Supplier Development Council. I was on the GMSDC board for a number of years as the MBEIC chair. And so I was the voice of the MBEs in the state of Georgia. There were over 600 of them. And I would talk to and meet with several of the MBEs every week and just talk about pain points and what they wanted me to advocate for on the board. And one of the things that I kept hearing was, I don't want to talk about training. I just want a contract. No more development. Where's my contract? And so because I was in corporate America for a long time, and I was blessed to have gotten really good training at IBM and MCI and the places that I worked, I understand the value of development and training.
Right.
Even as CEO, I'm CEO of an 18-year-old company. We have delivered $300 million worth of work of our own and participated on another $2.3 billion in partner work. I'm in a training program myself.
Right.
I continue to develop myself because what got me here can't take me where I want to go.
Right.
So training and development is essential. We desperately need it. The fourth thing I would say is a willingness to partner. Mm-hmm. And again, that's a mirror thing, not a window thing. It's not so much for us to go to the federal government and have that discussion. No, we have a cultural barrier, mm-hmm. To working together, to trusting one another, to figuring out what a good deal looks like, so that we could come together and do work together as contractors or software developers or whatever the industry might be. Again, some of the things I picked up when I was the MBIC chair with the GMSDC was Fred McKinley at Dartmouth, who is very well known for his studies in supply diversity. He released a study years ago that talked about the fact that the Black community was the worst community with regards to joint ventures, partnering together, and mergers and acquisitions. Wow. Because we quite frankly have a trust issues. This is I'm speaking for Ernest now. Yeah. Because I've seen it in discussions. We have to overcome some of our cultural concerns and cultural fears, because right now too many of us are cool with 100% of a grape instead of 10% of a watermelon. Right. Right. So we have to partner together. We need to buy each other's services. Me as a general contractor, I need, and we are intentional about trying to partner with and bring on as many, Black trade partners as we possibly can. So those are the kind of things that we, again, looking in the mirror versus looking out, that we need to do. And fifth, again, I would say, we need to get more access. We need more non-traditional partners and owners to give us access to opportunity. One of the things President Stimley said at our winter conference meeting in Portland was that certification is not a business model. Mm-hmm. It's not a business model. And so we want to have opportunities to work with private developers. Mm-hmm. We want to have opportunities to work with American Airlines or Delta Airlines or Fortune 500 corporations. We want to have opportunities to work, in markets where traditionally you don't see us. Right. Because the fact of the matter is, construction and contracting is a very tough business. And there's a lot of failure in this business. And you need to be really, really good at what you do and be able to deliver a profit at the end of the day. And customers, owners tend to do business with the same folks over and over again.
Because they trust them.
because they trust them. But at the same time, I know this, because I've talked to enough folks, because I've been a member of Associated General Contractors, which is the largest trade association in the country. I'm currently a member of Associated Builders and Contractors, which is the second largest trade association in the country. White folks fail just as much as black folks.
At least as much, because they get more opportunities, so their failure rate may be even higher.
It's probably higher because they get more work.
They get more opportunities. Right.
So when the disruption happens, give us an opportunity. Give us an opportunity to sit at the table, take a look at what we can do, evaluate us, to see if we can fill a gap and deliver some services.
I think Brad's gonna sneak in here his technical difficulty. If he can come on, I'm gonna let him ask a question.
Okay.
Well, I'll ask the next question. If he comes in, we'll interrupt my question for. Oh, there you go.
I'm here.
Go ahead and ask your question, Brad, before you drop off again.
I don't know what's going on, guys. I got Wi-Fi, but I keep bouncing out. So I wanted to congratulate President Ellis on the contract that you guys recently got with the city of Atlanta, the Parks and Recreation with H.J. Russell. I think that's a good example of what you were talking about in terms of partnering. But can you tell us a little bit about the historic significance of that contract?
It is really cool that H.J. Russell and FS360 are working together on what is a prime project in the city of Atlanta. Two black general contractor construction managers on a project that's significant, in a city like Atlanta. I mean, the fact of the matter is, we actually we did some research. Again, H.J. Russell's going into a third generation, so they know Atlanta as well as anybody. We couldn't find an instance where two black firms got together and partnered together as primes to deliver, a project of this size. And the beautiful thing about it is, we're starting to see more of it show up across the country. I believe H.J. Russell's got a project in Dallas now where we're partnering with Postel Group and I think Source Building Group in a project like this. This again, the significance is that we need to work together. We need to partner on opportunities where the numbers make sense, the staffing makes sense, the owner makes sense, and put ourselves in a position as companies where we can take the next step. Where again, H.J. Russell's moving into the third generation. FS360 is trying to grow and scale and be right behind them and draft right behind them. And so we had our outreach event at the gathering spot with a packed room and of folks who came out to congratulate and celebrate, this historic event and opportunity. And so, one of the things I said was, at the gathering spot was, okay, now the hard work begins because all eyes on us. We have to deliver excellence. We plan to engage the community and have the highest minority participation we possibly can, while also delivering maximum value. We want to have the safest job we can possibly have. We want to deliver, an excellent schedule with awesome quality. Excellence has to be at the core of what we do here, and I know that's going to be the case because that's H.J. Russell's mantra. Going into the third generation, and that's been our goal as FS360. So, the NAMAC community here in Atlanta has been very supportive of what we're doing. We're trying to bring as many of them onto the team as we can, and hopefully this will be the first of many, many more across the country, as well as more here in Atlanta.
Can you tell us a little bit about some of the other NAMAC Greater Atlanta chapter members? I know you mentioned H.J. Russell, but I've been privileged to know Art Queen at Ebony Glass and Jan Bryson, but I know that there's guys like Edgar Perry and Dave Moody. Can you tell us about some of the Atlanta giants that you have an opportunity to rub shoulders with?
It's. I'll give you a quick story. I'm not a native of Atlanta. I moved here in '99. I'm originally from Kentucky. Moved here from Los Angeles in '99, and when I got to Atlanta, got into construction in 2008, and the late Al Smith approached me about joining the board, and I told Al, there's too many giants on that board. I ain't joining that board unless they're okay with it. I said, unless Mr. Queen and Jan Bryson are on board with me being on the board, I just prefer not to do so because I know I can't get involved and keep my mouth shut. So if they wanted me to be involved, then I'm up for it. And so when you think about Arthur Queen and what he was able to do and the legacy that he built, and now his daughter Kelsey is continuing, it's really humbling, and it keeps me on my toes with regards to the mission here. If you think about what Egbert Perry has done, I don't think people understand how much of a giant that man is. I mean, he was on the board of Freddie Mac. I mean, you don't get to be on the board of one of the largest or most important regulatory bodies in the country that governs, home financing, unless you one sharp man. And so you look at what folks like Steve Barnes have done. He's built his company, Bryson Constructors, and now his son is taking it to the next generation. Companies like Synergy, where Ralph Phillips and Jeannie Hunter are I think they're in like year 22 or something, and going strong and doing their thing. And you got, some young folks young companies that just joined the board, like EME Construction. Daryl James just joined the board. I think he's 3 or 4 years in. He listens, he takes advice, and he's doing really well. Erskine, Harris, who owns New Gen Construction, who, is one of the largest, fastest growing concrete contractors in the city. Jerome McLaughlin with McLaughlin Electric. I mean, journeyman electrician, growing his business, thriving. He's trying very, very hard to get on the Johnny White Golf Course project with H.J. Russell and us. There's just so many success stories. And over the last couple of years, when Kelly Britton came on board as our executive director, we've been very intentional about, membership recruitment and outreach and retention. And, this year we passed 150 members in the city of Atlanta, along with, 30 corporate partners that, have all raised their hand and signed up and invested in NAMAC, from as little as $2,500 to as much as $50,000, to advance the mission of the association. And so, we have a number of small members that we're working really hard to try to help grow their capacity and get them in the room. I mean, we want to get them in the room where the deals are done. And so every single month, we have a meet and greet with a prime contractor so that our members have a chance to rub shoulders with Turner Construction and DPR and McCarthy and Swinnerton and New South Synergy, Skanska, whoever it might be. And when they come out of that room, they're able to say, okay, they've got these projects, they got these scopes, they got this deal flow, I'm going after that work. And, they can objectively walk out of there saying, I'm going to bid on that stuff. And, we've seen growth over the last 5 years, and it's really been cool to see.
So given all that you said, as we talk about all the reverse discrimination, are you suggesting that perhaps remedial work doesn't need to be done that is really a function of just hard work for the African American contractors, the work you guys are doing, that the DB programs are no longer needed or something? I'm trying to get a handle, because it seems like in Atlanta there's lots of business, so the black contractors don't have any struggles except for regular business struggles. They don't have any extra racial struggles. Am I missing something?
No, it's funny. I have a saying, when I relate back to the civil rights era, the '60s. I was a young pup, but somewhat of a student of the game. I believe that we needed both Malcolm and Martin.
Uh-huh.
We needed Malcolm's ferocity. We needed his anger. We needed his demanding stature, his eloquence. But at the same time, we needed Martin's grace. We needed Dr. King's love vision. We needed sometimes to step back and be gentle at the same time. And so in this instance, it goes back to something I said early on, that we do not retreat from the gains that we've made on the legal fronts, the DBE programming, the City of Atlanta's programming. We will continue to stand up and fight, alongside every organization, every municipality, every state, level that we can, and demand that, look, these are gains deserved, and we're not giving an inch. But here's the difference in construction. The fact of the matter is, the market needs us. Mm-hmm. And I've said it to my chapter, said, look, we need to be bold about it. The fact of the matter is that the industry is 500,000 workers short. Mm-hmm. And we don't have enough contractors to do all the work. I've said it in meetings, with that we've had with all of our prime contractors, and Meet the Primes or in AGC meetings. White contractors couldn't do all this work even if they wanted to, because there's not enough of them. Mm-hmm. So you got to deal with us. You need to deal with us.
But do they? I mean, it seems like they'd rather the whole of the work not get done than to bring in minority contractors.
We don't see that necessarily. But I will tell you that there are some markets that are predatory in that regard. You're going to have a hard time finding minority road contractors. Mm-hmm. You're going to have a hard time finding large civil contractors. Mm-hmm. In the state of Georgia, there's probably 3 that have scale that can work on some large road projects, road contracts. There's one large concrete contractor. There's one large civil contractor. There's a female steel contractor. I don't know the whole state. I'm not knowing, but and the reality, the hurdles are not just discriminatory. The hurdles are not just governmental. Again, it goes back to one of those asks that you asked me about the top 5. It takes a lot of capital to do road work. Mm-hmm. You need millions of dollars to have yellow iron. They call it yellow iron. Those big yellow Caterpillar.
The machines.
You can't get those on layaway.
Can't pull out your American Express card and buy that. Okay.
You might be able to do it with the black card, but you can't get it with the green. That's for sure. So it requires a lot of capital. So there's definitely a market where, look, if they don't have to allow black contracting, will they allow it? Probably not. No, probably not. But again, I'll just show you my frame of reference, right? This is Ernest again. This is not NAMAC. I grew up on a farm. My father lost his right arm in a farming accident before I was born. It was chewed up past the elbow. They had to take it. Okay. And that was before I was born. Wow. And so my entire life, I never knew my father with a right arm. And let me tell you something. He could outwork 2 men. Yeah. And he never allowed that to stop him. So I look at that and say, when I see adversity, just because of how I was raised, what I saw, that's no excuse for me to lay down, lay back, So when I look at the marketplace, and he also told me something else. He said, I like a redneck because I know where they stand. Mm-hmm. We know where the market is. We know what the game is. We know what we're up against, as contractors. The certifications and the regulations give us access to opportunity. They give us access to deal flow. They give us access to work. We still have to earn the contracts. And I think if there's an argument to be made, and I think the NMSDC's recent lawsuit, I hope they make it. The lawsuit against the NMSDC.
Mhm.
I hope they make the argument that, number one, the certifications aren't guaranteeing anything, and that the companies that get certified still have to earn the business. We have to earn the business. They're not giving us anything.
So why? So then just answer this question for me. Given the very low numbers of African American contractors, is it then your calculation that we're just not good enough to earn the business? Is that why our numbers are so low?
I don't know that we have. We don't have a plethora of contractors in the marketplace. We don't. I couldn't tell you that we have hundreds of thousands of contractors in the marketplace. Again, there would be more, I believe, if there was capital that would allow us to buy the equipment that we need to buy, to be able to hire the people at market that we need to hire. That will allow us to have deal flow outside of just the traditional government markets. I mean, it's not a single threaded issue. I mean, I think there is a multifaceted number of issues that conspire to keep Black contractors either out of the game
Mm-hmm.
or from scaling. The government's programs are just a part of it, which is why NAMAC exists. It's not just to ensure that we have access to deal flow, that we just have programming and government regulations in place that are going to continue to make sure we have a seat at the table. It's about, we have 4 pillars: access, advocacy, relationships, and development. And all those pillars are necessary, so that, when we do see those seasons, because look, what are we going to do? We're and I had this conversation at our annual meeting about a month ago. For all intents and purposes, the DBE program is dead.
Right.
It does not exist.
Mm-hmm.
And so what are you going to do?
Yeah.
What are you going to do? And let's carry that forward a little bit. Let's say we're 2 years down the road.
Mm-hmm.
And God forbid that the house doesn't turn.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say the house turns, right? And we're still 2 years down the road, and the president still controls the purse strings. I mean, and he turns off the funding for programming. What are we going to do?
Mm-hmm.
We're just going to wait until the next Obama shows up and tries to turn the spigot back on? The reality is that
So
NAMAC does what it needs to do to be effective, regardless of who's in office.
Right.
That's what a trade association's job is. We're not an advocacy group necessarily. We're not a lobbying group. We do not lobby.
Mm-hmm.
We're not a 501c4 or a 501c6. We're a 501c3. We are a trade association that advocates on behalf of our members to make sure we put our members in a position of wealth, regardless of who's in office, regardless of what the government circumstances are. And we've been doing it for 55 years. We've been doing a good job.
So then I'm going to ask one more question. I'm going to turn back to Brad, and just so in the same vein, given what you just said about people trying to figure out a way around all this stuff, if these programs must have value, else people wouldn't be working so hard to get rid of them, right? I mean, what's the impetus for all the effort against them if there's a way to work around them?
Well, for me, the more dangerous legal challenges aren't the ones that are pointed towards the government. It's the ones pointed towards the Fearless Fund.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was a big one. Yeah.
Right. It's the ones that are pointed towards, again, like the NMSDC, Edward Bloom.
Yeah.
It's the ones that are.
He's a diabolical genius, by the way.
I mean,
Well, he's evil, but he is.
You got to get. He knows his mission is clear.
Yeah, and his
mission is
but
clear.
mission and his effectiveness. I mean, he got rid of what affirmative action at Harvard. I mean, he's
Again, and he's using the Civil Rights Act that actually freed the slaves, you know, as his basis for his argument, and he's been very successful with it.
Yeah.
You know, but those foundations have been laid for 30 years because of all the Republican judges that have been put in place.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So this isn't new. This groundwork has been going on since Goldwater.
Yeah. Well,
Since the 60s.
You go back to was it Chief Justice Powell when he was still a lawyer in Richmond wrote that memo called defense of free market economy, where that's where all this started. I mean, they're coming out of that Hawaii 1971, I believe it was.
This if we didn't see this coming, then we just weren't paying attention.
Yeah.
You know, and so when I look at, you know, the news and when I read what is underway, am I alarmed about the attack on the DBE program? Yes, I am. Am I alarmed about, you know, the hub program down in Texas basically being dismantled, you know, because of a second tier staffer deciding to change the rules? Yes, that is wrong, and it's discriminatory. You know, am I concerned about, you know, the state of Georgia trying to turn 5 counties into nonpartisan voting communities? Yes, that is discriminatory and just wrong and borderline evil. Mm-hmm. But the legal pursuits that give me pause is when multiple attorney generals send the Fortune 500 letters telling them that anything that they do is considered illegal. Mm-hmm. That, you know, again, and maybe it's because of my background working in corporate America for as long as I did. But the number of people that are affected there, the number of contractors that are working for Delta and for Home Depot and for Clorox and Newell Rubbermaid, the number of us that have good contracts, there's a lot of them. And so those pursuits are the ones that we also need to be paying attention to. Those are private concerns, not government. Yep. I mean, the federal government is the number one procurer. You know, it is the iceberg, you know, the 1.7%, you know, above the waterline, the rest is below the waterline, the opportunities there, you know. But if you look at, you know, how much AT&T spends $1 billion a year with minority firms.
You shouldn't say out loud. Blue will sue them.
Well, there you go. But they already know they're part of the $1 billion roundtable.
Yeah.
So all the firms on the $1 billion roundtable, you know, those are just as concerning, and should be just as concerning to all of us on this call and anyone who might be listening as anything that's going on the federal level, because there are so many firms, so many Black folks, so many folks that are delivering value to those firms, that if they get attacked and that goes away, that's going to move the needle down in a huge way.
My turn?
Brad? Yep. Your turn.
So I have to say that I'm sitting right now in the historic Ebenezer Baptist Church. And a few weeks ago, President Ellis, we had Executive Pastor John Vaughn on, who spoke about the Black church's role in supporting economic justice and community organizing. And I just wanted to ask you 2 questions. One, I know NAMAC is not a lobbying firm, but how can we work together with organizations like the SCLC and the Urban League and the Black Caucus and Black churches to move the needle and actually, maybe leverage the corporations that you were talking about to do more business with Black contractors? That's question number 1. And question number 2, I want to get in before our time expires. And I sent you this earlier about the South Korean government investing $350 billion in the U.S. and I know you have, you talked about your experience in the technology industry and building. I think you said you had a couple of projects that you're building now in the technologies industry. How can we work together, with those organizations that I just mentioned to make sure that Black contractors have an opportunity to participate in this South Korean investment in the U.S.?
Yep. Well, number one, I think that we need to come together and cobble together the story that I believe has been untold with regards to what our capacity truly is. I mean, I relate back to a meeting I had with some influential Black lobbyists when I was involved with the GMSDC. We talked about what the capacity was for all of the GMSDC MBEs. It was billions of dollars. When you add up, 600 or 700 MBEs certified by the GMSDC, what their spending power was, what our tax dollars looked like, how many people we employed, the economic impact was with a B, not an M. It was billions. And the feedback that we got was the folks on Capitol Hill don't know that. The folks on the Golden Dome do not know what our capacity is. So whether it's the SCLC and the Urban League and NAMAC and NOMA and the organizations in our community coming together and codifying that information, codifying that data, and then telling that story, because I truly believe in my heart that no one knows that NAMAC membership probably has $1 billion of bonding capacity, collective, across all of our members here. And that's just Georgia, right? Because we got a couple of firms that by themselves can bond $100 million projects, so they don't know we have the capacity. And, at the same time, we need to come together and talk about the value we create. When Microsoft came into town, when they were going to do the Grove Park project, I think his name is Brad Davis, the CEO, was here. And they had a lot of us over at the gathering spot talking about, the project. I made the point as a representative of NAMAC, do everything you can to make sure we have an opportunity to sit at the table, because I'm almost certain that if you compare me to a white prime, I'm going to deliver more value because my cost structure is a lot better. I can deliver value. So if you got a $2, $5, $10 million project, don't give it to the large prime, give it to me, because you're going to get more for that $2, $10, $5 million from me than you're going to get from a large prime competitor. Again, that's about access, right? So we got to talk about our value, because the narrative has been that we're just given this work, right? And so, yes, we need to fight to make sure the laws and the regulations are still on our side, but we got to also, you got to give President Trump credit. He controls the narrative. We got to take back the narrative, because we have the truth on our side. We have to tell the truth. And the truth is, we deliver value. We have capacity. We put people to work. We deliver tax revenue. We deliver tax dollars. And that same message we can give to the South Korean investors that are coming in, whether they're down near Savannah doing the Hyundai plant or wherever else they're coming into. At the end of the day, those communities are business communities, and they want value. They want projects done on time. They want the highest quality. They want it done safely. Those are the covenants and tenets of construction, and we can deliver all that. But I guarantee they don't know that we do. We have that capacity, and we can do it.
We'll pass that message on to them. I promise you, if you don't mind, I'm going to share this message with those South Korean investors.
Very good.
So before we're a little bit over, but I do want to follow up the last comment you made, because that does seem to get back to the discrimination thing. Like, Black contractors deliver better value, as good a project. And so the lack of access or the lack of opportunity or contracting numbers seems to drive the idea that people are being ignored, whether by accident or on purpose, which drives back the whole conversation about, not being discriminated against in the process. Like, that people are purposely being overlooked. Am I saying that right? I mean, that seems to be where we ended this. Like, go ahead.
Well, so there has been a narrative. There has been a narrative that working with Black contractors costs more and slows the schedule down, and that the quality isn't as good. That's been a narrative. I've heard it since I started the company in 2008. I've also heard the narrative around the city of Atlanta, at least, that the programming and the DBE, the designation and whatever might exist in our city and other cities is set up for corruption.
Mm-hmm.
You hear that. But here's what I know. 18 years in the business, I compete against prime contractors every single day. My bonding capacity is put up against my competitors every day.
Mm-hmm.
I have to secure, and put my home at risk, just like every other contractor that's in this business. And I know that my fellow board members and the other folks that are in the game, have the same. So again, there's a messaging that I think if there's effective money to be spent, again, because our budgets are probably 1/100th of a Edward Bloom, right?
Right.
Money to be spent. It should be, I don't know if it should be spent on legal. I mean, Rodney Strong might disagree with me, but at least should be spent on messaging, because they've done a great job of controlling the narrative. And the truth is that we deliver value, we have capacity, we believe in excellence, and we deliver it because we don't get 3 strikes, we only get 1.
Yeah. If you're lucky. Yeah.
If you're lucky. If you get access, you only get 1.
Brad, do you have anything else?
Thank you, President Ellis. No, thank you, President Ellis. We really appreciate your being generous with your time. I apologize for my technical challenges here at Ebenezer.
It's all good. Thank you guys for having me. I hope you have a great night, and I hope this went well for you.
Well,
definitely.
We'll invite you to DC. We'll have to have you come to DC and do some hill visits with us.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I love DC.
All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you, guys. Good night. Good night.
Thank you, guys.
Have a
Good night.